Hello guys, and welcome back to another tutorial. My name's Chlo. I'm at Chlo's Craft Closet. I'm a demo for Stampin' Up on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, Australia. And today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create some of these beautiful blended strips on the background of these cards. And we're also going to do a little bit of colouring with the Stampin' blends for these beautiful cakes. Now, I have to admit, this card is super simple, super quick, and you could probably make quite a few of these in a very short space of time, which I think is a great idea for making cards. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a little trick to make this beautiful blended strip. This one is using all those beautiful soft pinks, and then I wanted to make a little bit more of a masculine one, and this one, I don't know if you can really see, but this has a little bit of gold on the end. If I can try and catch the light, you might just see that. So I've made a bit more of a masculine card because, let's face it, guys, the boys are hard to create cards for, aren't they? Because we like to add all the glittery bits and the sparkles, and you know, I've added a few little brown pearls, but not too many, just enough just to give it a little, you know, a little something. So we're going to be using the Piece of Cake stamp set. I think this stamp is fantastic, and obviously a lot of people agree because it sold out when it was first released in the Occasions catalogue. And I think that's partly because it comes with a coordinating punch. So let's face it, anything that we don't have to fussy cut, that comes with a punch that we can just punch, pop, out it comes, is really going to be super popular for card makers, from beginners right through to the avid makers like myself. So without further ado, I think we might get started. So there's not really a great deal of cutting involved in this today. All we really need is a base. So in this case, we're going to use Blackberry Bliss as our base, and then we just want two pieces of Whisper White, which we can get from one sheet. So that's super duper easy. So I'll move these out the way for now. And I'm going to bring in my stamping trimmer and we'll get cutting. So let's cut the base down first. Oh, I'll bring out my arm. And so we're cutting our base down to my usual size, which is 11.5 inches round to 4 inches. And that's my general card base. And then while the trimmer's out and I've got my card base here, I'm going to score him at 5 3/4. Okay, so I know that my base and my cards are not quite American size because American A4 is different. And they're also not quite Australian size because I like to just trim off those couple of little centimetres either side so I can round out my quarters as much as possible without having to go into like 12/16 or 7/8 or anything like that. Oh, I'm putting my trimmer away and I don't actually need to because we need to cut a base. So my main card base that we're actually going to be working on is going to be 3 5/8. Oh, I've scored it instead of cut it. I'm sure I'm not the only one who does that. And 5 3/8. So 3 5/8, 5 3/8, and that will give us our main card base that we're going to work on. But I want to mat that onto another piece of white because I find that's going to make that little border pop, that little strip pop a little bit more. So this one I'm just going to add an extra 1/8 to. So that means this is now, oh, actually I might do this side first rather than cut that whole piece. So this is going to be 5.5, and then we're going to just cut this down to 3 3/4. Okay, so now when I bring these two together, it's a bit hard to see on camera, but they are, can you see that? They are just a little bit smaller. So just, I think it just finishes off the card, just makes it have that little extra wow factor. All right, so now I can put my trimmer away. I will put my little bits of scrap white away for the time being, but we're actually going to need them because that's what we're going to stamp our stamps on. I was going to say stamp our cakes on. Now I'm going to bring in a little piece of scrap paper. And I'm going to put the backing away because we don't want to accidentally ink the wrong one up. And what I'm going to do with my blended panel is I'm just going to line it up so it's nice and square on this grid paper. And I'm going to use a little piece of painter's tape, or purple tape in my case. And I'm going to peel off a piece that is about the width of the card. Now, before I stick this straight on, I'm always worried about it pulling off a bit of paper. I know it's not supposed to, but I always find it does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my sleeve down here, and I'm going to put that on there, and I'm going to peel it off, and then I'm going to put it on again. And I'm going to leave it there for a second. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my second piece of purple tape, same again, so I want 2 pieces. Bring down this sleeve, and I'm going to put it on there. Now, I do usually put this on the carpet because I find that that's the best place to get some of the tackiness off, which is all I'm really doing here. I just don't want the tape tackier than I need it to be. It's not holding anything into place that, you know, needs to be seriously kept into place, so it needs to be seriously sticky. But I just want it so that when I peel it off, I'm not going to peel off any of that top layer of paper. Now, I'm going to line up my cardstock onto my grids, and I want to roughly somewhere, probably, I don't know, about maybe 1.5 inches up, I'm going to add that tape there. Maybe I need to go higher up. Let me have a look. Maybe I'll do the top one first. That might be easier. Okay. So top one first. And I'm just following that tape, that line of that tape along that grid line. Okay, so you're going to get a nice straight line. And I'm going to come in and take the second piece, and I'm going to do the same again. Now, on my piece of paper, this is actually in centimetres, so these must be 0.5 centimetres. So I'm doing 1.5 centimetre gap. Okay, so that's 1.5 squares. And that's how thick that line is going to be. So it's about 1.5 squares thick. And that is what we're going to do for our border. I'm just having a look. I think that looks like it might need to come up a little bit. I'll end up fluffing around with this for ages, and then, you know, it always looks wonky. As long as it's, you know, fairly straight, I think we can get away with it. Okay, so what colours am I going to be using today? We're going to start with powder pink, which is a really soft, gentle pink. Then we're going to go straight into some melon mambo, and then we're going to finish off with a bit of rich raspberry. Now, I know my cardstock is blackberry bliss, but I think that's going to be too harsh to go from this colour to blackberry. So I think rich raspberry is a really nice in-between colour for the melon mambo. So those are the 3 colours we're going to do. And now, I don't know if anyone else has heard of these. So these are makeup brushes. They're for putting on foundation and powders onto your face, but they've recently become really hot, I suppose. They're a hot trend in the crafting world because they're really good for sponging on colour. There are some really super duper expensive ones. These ones came from eBay, and I think I only paid maybe, I think I paid less than $10 for a pair. That's obviously 10 Australian dollars. So have a look around. I know you can buy them on Amazon if you're in the US. And I'm pretty sure you can buy them on eBay if you're in the UK. But they are so good for blending. They take out that awkward circles that you sometimes get, like those daubers shapes that you get. And you can be really gentle, and they're really quite smooth when it comes to blending. So we're going to use this blush today. And so what we're going to do is, you can have a brush for each colour if you wanted to. So if you were going to make a couple of these in this colour, I would recommend that you have 3 brushes. But as I'm only making the one today, I'm obviously going to go from powder pink to melon mambo to rich raspberry, and I'm hoping not to have to go from rich raspberry back to powder pink, because then I'm going to have to get another brush out. But my plan is to be able to go from one to the other without too much of an issue. These can be washed. So I have, once I've used them a couple of times, I go and I just get a little bit of warm water, a little bit of washing up detergent, and I just give them a quick rinse, and I leave them standing up in a glass on the windowsill, and overnight they're pretty much dry and ready to go again. So they are really, really amazing, and you can get them at a super simple price. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to pull up my sleeves so I don't stick my arms in any of these colours. I'm going to open all my inks to start with so that we're ready to go. And what we're going to do, I'm going to sit down so that I can reach in not too badly. We're going to start with the powder pink, and we just want to get a bit of colour And I always start off my cardstock when I first start. Not so much of a requirement for the lighter colours, but I like to sort of get a bit of ink on my brush so it's sort of ready to go. It's almost like oiling a new pan, really. So I want to get a little bit of ink on my brush, and as you can see there, it's starting to come through. And then what I'm going to do is I'm now going to add that, starting off the page, and I'm going to just roll that across. So a bit more ink, starting off the page and rolling across. Now I'm trying to get a bit of an ombre effect. So I don't want to be too heavy-handed here, but I can be a little bit more heavier sort of at the end of that colour. So when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about this into, I've got 3 inks, so I'm looking at this into thirds. So I want 1/3 to be my powder pink, my second third, my middle piece is going to be Melon Mambo, and then my last third is going to be Rich Razzleberry. But I obviously want that to blend into each colour, so I'm not going to do just a direct 1/3 in that powder pink. I want to sort of stretch that colour out a little bit more into my Melon Mambo area so that I do have that slight grade of graduation there. So I think I'm quite happy with that. That's quite a nice gradual grade. So now I'm going to go straight to Melon Mambo. Now this is obviously a darker colour, so I'm going to really want to make sure that I work this off a little bit first. And I'm going to go into the middle of that piece because I want it to be darker on this side and lighter on this side. So I'm going to start in the sort of middle section of my third, and I'm just going to be really gentle when I come up to here. I obviously don't want to go all the way along, but I do want to go a little bit into that soft pink first, and then I'm going to go again. I'm going to go outside of my third into my Rich Razzleberry section because I want to have that blend later on. And so I want a fairly deep pink. You know, I want that Melon Mambo to shine on its section. So I'm going a little bit hard around there. But I think that's quite nice. I think that shows you what we're up to there. Now you can, if you want to take some of the colour off, you can just sort of rub it on your paper, on your scrap paper, and as you can see that does take a little bit of the ink off. And now we're going to go into Rich Razzleberry, and again it's a really dark colour, so it's going to come up super dark to start with. So we're just going to get a little bit on our brush, working it in, getting it used to being on the bristles, so you've got a little bit to work with. And I'm just going to come in, start off the page and work my way into that colour. Now I obviously want this quite dark, and so even though I'm starting off the page, it's still not as dark as I would like, so I'm going to go straight in off from the ink pad straight onto my DSP to really darken that shade up. I'm still starting on the edge on my darkest side and working my way into that nice Melon Mambo without too much colour because I want it to be light, but I'm being a little bit more heavy-handed on this darker part here. Okay, I'm just going to work that through a little bit just so we get a nice graduation there. Okay, and that is pretty much it, guys. That's pretty easy. So what I'm going to do is you can actually use this tape again. So I'm just going to get my cloth here, and I'm just going to give my tape a quick wipe. And then that tape actually can be used again. So you're just wiping it off because you obviously don't want to use it again and transfer that purple or that pink ink onto another piece of cardstock or another ink pad. So you can give that a clean and that will come off nice and easily. So there you go. That is all that we need for that. So I'm going to close up my ink pads because they are done with, and I don't know about you, but I always stick my hands or my elbows or my arms into my ink pads when I am doing something else. So I'm going to take those off and put those there. Now there is one more thing that I want to do with this, and on my original card, which I'll bring back over here, you can see there's a bit of splatter on there. Now that is using one of our pearl paints, which is called Frost White. Here we go. This is it here. And it's just like a shimmer paint. Now, Stampin' Up do sell a couple of different colours. I believe we have a copper. And I think on the clearance rack, if you have a look, I think we might have a gold on there. And I think we also sell champagne. I really like the Frost White. And I think I might get the champagne as well for Christmas because I think that'll be really good. Just has a little ball bearing in there. And so we're just giving that a bit of a shake to shake up the mixture, make sure it's nice and even. Now, on this card, I don't know if you can see, let me bring it up a bit closer. I've actually I've splattered the ink onto it, which I really like that effect. But I did do another one, which I haven't finished yet. And if I bring that in, so this one, I actually painted that shimmer paint all the way across. So instead of doing splatters like I have on this one, I actually painted it across. And I kind of like that effect too. So I think for this one we'll splatter again, but you can paint it across. So if you get a really big splatter, and if that's what happens to me, then we will paint it across, because that's a really good way of finishing up. Now I'm trying to find, here we go, I'm trying to find an aqua painter, and I find this is a really good way of doing these splatters. So give that a really good shake. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the lid off of this. I'm going to use my aqua painter, and I'm just going to dip it in and put it on my block. Blocks are great as, you know, an artist palette. So, you know, we don't have to just use them for mounting stamps. They're great for other things. They're great for putting re-inkers on. They're great for adding ink to, and then using it as a palette for something else. At this case, I'm going to move that out of the way. I'm going to use it as a splatter platform. And I'm just going to flick off the end all the way across that strip. Try not to get it anywhere else. So if you're going to do this, make sure you don't have your card base sitting next to you or any other cardstock that you don't want to get splattered, because even though we try our hardest, we still tend to get splatter. Splatter goes everywhere, doesn't it? Which is part of the reason why we love it so much. All right, splat, 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 splat. And you don't want too much. You want this to be quite delicate. It doesn't have to be heaps. And that is enough for that, I think. So if I put the lid back on here, put that to one side. That now goes in my bucket of things that I have to wash. I have a bowl in my craft room of things that I need to wash. So I always put stuff in there, which is where this brush will go now. So I will tuck that over there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up to the camera a little bit. And so you can just see those really gentle splatters. So I'm going to move this to one side and leave this to dry for now. It doesn't take very long, but I don't want to smudge it. So I'm going to put it to one side. And what we're going to do now is we're going to bring our Whisper White piece back in. And we're going to do some stamping and some colouring. So on my particular card, out of the stamp set, we're going to use this flower one, which I really love. Up on my blog, I've made a card with this one, which is such a fun card. And my daughter's going to make another one because she really enjoyed that card, so she wants to make one. And I will have another card this week as well up on my blog using this one, which I always think is more of a wedding-y card. But today we're going to be using this one. So we're going to fish that one out of its case. And I'm going to bring in a block here, and I'm just going to line that up on there. And while we've got the stamps out, we might as well line up, get the other ones on. So we're going to do, this is the cake stand. Now I find that if I put this on, I tend to squash it and then it doesn't sit so nicely in the punch. So I'm just going to drop it onto my workspace and then pick it up that way, and it tends to keep its shape a little bit more. So we're going to use that one, and then we're going to need a sentiment, and I quite like the one that says, "Happy birthday, you sweet thing." I think that's cool. So now usually you guys see me lining this up on my, grid paper, but for the time being I'm going to put it there because we're actually going to use a stamp positioner for that one, but I'm putting it out on a block so I don't lose it. And now we can pop this away. Now when it comes to colouring with blends, for those who don't know, our alcohol blends markers, very much like Copics, they are alcohol, so we need a water-based black ink to colour in. So I'm going to very quickly stamp. Actually, go that way. Sometimes it's better. I'm going to stamp my cake and stamp him there. And then because my punch is based this way, with the cake that way and the stand that way, I'm going to turn my paper around and I'm going to stamp my stand there so that when I come to line it up, I can pop that one in there, pop that one in there, and then that way it's not too much of a hassle. There's no sort of extra cutting out needed. And then I'm just going to stamp this one, and I'm going to stamp him there, and that's it for those. Beautiful. Okay, da, 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 da. Pop all these out the way, and You don't need to give this too long to dry before you start colouring, but I always like to give it a little couple of seconds, minute maybe, and that's usually when I go to pull out my blends. So I've got out all the colours that I'm going to use today. Don't they look beautiful? Look at all those pretty colours. Okay, so the blends will be up on my blog, so if you don't catch them now, go over to my blog at Chlo's Craft Closet and I'll have them all listed of what colours I've used today. But we're going to use light and dark grey granite. We're going to use light and dark petal pink. This is seriously my favourite colour combination. I use it for skin, I use it for cake, I use it for outlining, use it all the time. So if you don't have petal pink in your collection, you need to get that immediately. Go out and buy it straight away. I'm going to have light and dark Flirty Flamingo. I'm going to have light and dark Lovely Lipstick. And then I'm going to use a little bit of light Rich Razzleberry and a little bit of light Pumpkin Pie. Okay, so you don't always have to use them as pairs. I quite often will mix and match. I do like light pumpkin pie with dark petal pink. Those two make a really good combination as well. And I also like dark calypso with light pumpkin too. So don't feel like you have to stick with your pairs. You know, break out, use a little bit of everything else. Have a bit of a, you know, bit of an escape. All right, so I'm going to sit back down again and hopefully I won't put my giant head into the camera while I do my colouring. Now, my colouring is pretty basic. I will not say that I'm the best colourer in the world because that would be a blatant lie. I'm a basic colourer and I sort of just go with what I feel looks like a good combination. I will say that I do like to add my light colours down first. I know a lot of people do it the other way, but I like to add my light down first. And I should have brought my glasses because I can't actually see very well and I'm trying not to get out of the lines. Okay, now you always have to keep the lids on these, but I actually just rest them with the lid on if I'm going to keep going backwards and forwards, which I am for this particular card. So when I'm sort of colouring, I like to not have to keep pulling the lids on and off, because anyone who's got these know that they are quite difficult, some of them, to get them back on and off again. So, okay, so all I'm doing is I'm going to add a little bit of dark either side because I'm assuming my light is coming straight down, straight in front. And obviously I'm thinking that this flower is going to add a bit of cast a bit of a shadow too. So I've just added a little bit of dark around there. And then I'm going to come back in with my light and I'm just going to blend that dark over a little bit and just blend it out a little bit. So not too much, just a bit, just a tad. Still leaving the lightest part in the middle. Okay, and that's pretty much my top tier. And then I'm just going to do the same effect down here on my bottom one. I really should have brought my glasses, shouldn't I? And it doesn't help that I'm not getting my head in the, trying not to get my head in the camera. All right, I've sort of coloured around those dots a little bit. Hopefully I haven't coloured them in too much. Luckily it's such a light shade that it shouldn't matter too much. So again, I'm not clicking that on. I'm just going to rest that because I'm going to come back to it in a second. And I'm now just going to add a little bit of that dark. And again, I'm only doing the edge because I'm assuming my light is coming in. The cake is curved, which means the side should be darker. I hope that makes sense. And that's really how basic I am when it comes to colouring. I just kind of think, what does the shape look like? And what would, you know, in the real world, what would this look like? Where would that shadow be? And so I'm just going to add a little bit in there, and that's it. That's what I'm going to do. Now, if you want to add a little bit of dark, you certainly can. If you want to make it sort of a little bit more evident that that's in the shadow, you can go back in and add more. It's always easier to add more than there is to take away, isn't it? You can't take the ink away. It's always easy to add it. All right, so that's my base of the cake. It looks pretty dark at the moment, but these will dry up, and you'll notice in a couple of minutes that they will be much lighter. Okay, so we're going to go in with, I think we might do a bit of Flirty Flamingo next. I'm going to get my light and my dark Flirty. And this is what I'm going to use for my, I don't know what this is. I'm assuming this is like a ribbon. This is my thinking. It's like a cake ribbon. So again, I'm just going in with my lighter shade. I'm only doing a little bit at a time because I don't want this to dry too quickly and I don't get time to blend those colours out. So I've added my dark and then I'm just going to go over that and a little bit more to add in. Okay, to add that bit in. And then I'm going to come down here and do the same again. A little bit there, a little bit there. Okay, come back with my dark. Add my bit of dark in there and my bit of dark in there. And then again, I'm just going to blend that out a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of that second coat almost over the top of there. And so doing that sort of still adds a bit of a colour in there. So even if you need 3 shades and you only have 2, you certainly can go back over your dark area with your dark ink and it will give a darker definition. Same with your light. You can add 1 layer of light and then go back over again when it's a little bit drier with your light again, and it will add that extra bit of definition. So it's sort of like adding that 3rd layer. So that's the basic of our cake. So I'm going to go with lovely lipstick now, which is quite a nice pink, because I don't have a Melon Mambo blend, so I'm using this as my sort of Melon Mambo marker, and I'm just going to go over those flowers just a little bit, again coming back in, and I'm just going to add a little bit of definition just in the middle there, because that is where your darker piece would be. Now, I'm not actually going to blend that out because it's such a tiny, 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 tiny image. I think if you blend it out, you're going to lose the definition. You're going to lose the shading and it's just going to look like a dark flower. So I'm just going to do the middle and then I'm just going to add a little bit out. And as it dries, it will sort of deal with the definition for me. Okay. And then I think I'm going to come in with my light rich razzleberry and those little dots. Oh, again, I obviously need my glasses. I'm just going to dot. You don't need to colour. I'm just going to dot those in. And I think I'm going to add purple to this sort of frill as well. My goodness, look how terrible I am when I can't see what I'm doing. Anyway, you guys get the idea. And I clearly need to go back and see the optometrist because my eye-hand coordination is terrible. And I'm just going to dot, 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 all the way along. All right, there's your cake. That's your basics of the cake. So I'm going to flip this over now. And this time we're going to bring out our grey granite. So we're going to use the light and the dark. And I'm going to start with the light shade again. And I'm just going to colour that top piece in light, like so. And then again, just adding a bit of that shading there. And then blending that out with the light grey granite. So I'm going over that dark and then sort of pushing that ink out almost. And then as I've still got the light in my hand, I can move on to my next section. And this is another reason why I tend to colour with my light first, because I tend to start off with light, go to dark, go back to light, which then makes it easier to then go on to the next section without accidentally going super duper dark in a certain area. Now I'm only going to do one side of that because I think if I do 2 sides it's going to look too sort of too dark there. So I'm just going to go one side and I'm going to follow that curve as well to sort of emphasize that sort of shape. And then forgot what I was doing then. And I'm going to go back in here. And the same way I coloured the top, that's how I'm going to colour this one. So I'm going to follow that line, that curve, and then I'm going to go over the dark bit and the light bit. And there you go, that's my stand. And I'm going to go and add, I think I might add Lovely Lipstick as this bit here. So this is my light Lovely, just a couple of lines. Oh, that's pretty, isn't it? Isn't it pink and grey? Beautiful colour combination. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of dark, and I'm not going to blend that. I'm going to leave it like that. All right, so that's our main part of colouring. So I'm going to put those to one side for now. And I'm going to bring my trusty punch in. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up. Now, I know a lot of people punch this way, but I like to punch this way so you can see what you're doing. So I'm going to line it up. Another trick is if you squeeze it gently, it sort of grips it in place and makes you be able to move it little pieces without moving the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to punch that out. I'm going to turn it around, and then I'm going to move this bit down here. And again, just gently hold it in place and then punch. Oh, I've got a spare one. Look at that. That's handy. Okay, and so there we go. There is our cake and our stand. Now, I've just realised I haven't done the candles, have I? I've got candles on my cake. All right, well, shall we wing it? Shall we stamp those straight on the card? Yes, let's do that. Okay, let's have a go at that. So what I'm going to do, oh, hang on, that's not our card. This is our card base. That's my other one. So we're going to peel this off very gently. And like I said, you always peel it back onto itself. So peel it as long as you can. So don't peel it up, peel it across and back onto itself. Hang on, can't get that side. Oh, no, look, I'm peeling the paper off. So I'm going to peel it away from it. There we go. Oh, caught the ends. Look at that. I obviously didn't squash those enough. That's a bit of a shame. All right, and that's why it's super duper important, girls, that you make sure that you take the tacky off your tape so you don't have that problem. All right, well, there's nothing I can do about that now. I'll just cry about that later. All right, I'm going to work out roughly where I'm going to put my cake. One there, one there. So my candles need to be sort of up there a little bit. So I'm going to get my candles out from my stamp set. And I'm going to get my block. I'm going to take the cake off and put that on there. And so I don't want them full length because they're very high. So I just want them about there. So let's ink this up. Oh, have a little practice. Yeah, that's good. All right. And I'm going to roughly work it out. And I'm going to stamp like so. And then when I come to put them back together again, there you go. Look at that. That worked beautifully. Sometimes you just need to wing it. You need to go by the seat of your pants. All right. So I'm going to colour those in a minute. But what I might do is stamp this sentiment. Now, I can't find my Stamparatus. I think I've obviously lent it out to somebody. So I found my old, I've had this for many years, old stamp positioner. And what I'm going to do is move all these bits and pieces out the way. I always have a piece of window sheets in here because if you are doing a stamp that you've already used, or it might have some ink on it and you want to line it up, you don't want to put it down here to line up